run through a few more themes from the dua, taking us towards the end of the dua and giving us an insight into makarim al-akhlaq, into the perfection and the best things that Imam ﷺ expects from us in terms of akhlaq. And akhlaq is really important, of course, because it is the essence of all the ibadah, but also because the Holy Prophet of Islam, in a very famous narration, when he's talking about his own the reason for him being sent as a prophet, as a messenger, he says, "Innama bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq." Those who are familiar with Arabic know that innama is adatul hasr, which means that anything that follows innama is exclusive. When the Holy Prophet of Islam says innama bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq, what we would translate it, or what would be accurate to translate it, is as the only reason that I was sent to the people is to perfect their akhlaq, is to take akhlaq to its perfection. So therefore, to know about akhlaq, to realize the value of akhlaq, and to hopefully implement that akhlaq into our lives is the purpose of the sending of the Holy Prophet of Islam, so that people realize their duties when it comes towards akhlaq. And that, of course, is related to ibadah, as we also mentioned in our previous discussions regarding the verse of Surah Dhariyat, which tells us about the purpose of creation, and says that the purpose of creation is ibadah, and that the essence of ibadah and the essence of doing that which pleases Allah Azza wa Jal is akhlaq. So we come to where we had left off the dua yesterday evening, and this is a very interesting part of the dua because of the language that the Imam uses, and it's a reflection of the language that's used by the Holy Quran. And of course, that is the beauty of what Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have taught us, that is always reflective of what the Holy Quran speaks about. As the Holy Prophet of Islam had said, "Inni tarikun fikum al-thaqalain kitab Allahi wa itrati ahl bayti ma in tamassaktum lan yaftariqa hatta yarida al-hawd ma in tamassaktum lan tadillu ba'di abada." Where he says two things. He says that as far as these two are concerned, they would never be separated. لَن يَفْتَرِقَ حَتَّى يَرِدَ عَلَيْهِ الْحَوْض, until they reach me near the pool of Kawthar. And the command for the rest of us, if we could have silence at the front, recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma in tamassaktum, if you stay to attached to these two, then lan tadillu ba'di abada, you will never go astray either. So that's reflective of what Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have spoken and what they've done and how they've acted, which is the language and the commandments of the Holy Quran. So the Imam alayhi salam, in this part of the dua, where he talks about what is the most important virtue of what a person must have, he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali وَحَلِّنِي بِحِلْيَةِ الصَّالِحِينَ وَالْبِسْنِي زِينَةَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. He says, count me amongst those who are amongst the righteous, and dress me with the dress of taqwa. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran also refers to taqwa as a dress. He says that the best libas, the best dress is the libas of taqwa. And it's interesting that taqwa is the parable for explaining taqwa is with libas, is with dress, is with covering. Because the translation, the literal meaning of taqwa is to cover. The purpose of libas, the purpose of dress is to cover. And of course the purpose of taqwa is also to cover, is to protect. And that person wears clothes in order to protect the body from heat and cold and so on and so forth. And it's the same purposes of taqwa. Because unfortunately we get this unfortunately we have these translations of the Holy Quran which tell us that taqwa means fear of God, or fear of punishment, or so on and so forth, whereas the reality of taqwa is something else. Taqwa is not fear in any case, and nor is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something that, or an entity that must be feared, and that taqwa is in reality what we mean when we're talking about taqwa is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do what is obligated, stay away from that which is prohibited, and to protect oneself from all that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes and would lead to His displeasure. That, in the reality of the meaning of the word, is taqwa, and the Imam is saying so, وَالْبِسْنِي زِينَةَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Dress me with this dress of taqwa, which will be a zinat, a beauty, an adornment for me. And that a person who is dressed in the clothes of taqwa, is dressed in the libas of taqwa, is a person who has zinat, has beauty in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if the people looking at that person think that this person is not very handsome or beautiful at all. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that it's not how you look and what you look like and how expensive the clothes you're wearing are, as far as I'm concerned, but what I'm more concerned about is how good is your libas of protecting yourself from the stench and the evil of sins. Is mentioned here, since this point has come, that a person came to Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam, and he said, Ya Ali, I have this difficulty in preventing myself from committing sins. How is it that you don't even go close to sin? So they were standing outside, and the Imam pointed towards a dump where people had dumped their rubbish, and there was a stench coming out from that dump. So the Imam said to him, would you eat out of that dump? And he said, no, I would not even like to go close to it because of the stench that's coming from it and the fact that it's ugly and it's dirty in that place. The Imam says, that is what sin looks like to me. That is the reality of sin. That's what sin looks like to me. And the reason why it doesn't look like it to you is because shaitan and iblis is able to disguise it with the covering of zinat. He makes it look so attractive that behind it the stench and the ugliness of the sin is not available. Which reminds me of a joke that used to go around on social media a very long time ago. That once Bill Gates dies and he goes up to the heavens. This is a joke, I must emphasize. It's not to be taken seriously, but just to mix up the discussion, because the discussion is a bit serious. So he goes up to the heavens, and God says to him that you did a great service by creating all these wonderful software projects, so I'm giving you a choice of where you want to reside eternally. So he says, I want to, as all good businessmen would do, he says, I want to see what I'm laying myself in for. So I want to see what is heaven like and what is hell like. So he goes, he's given a tour of heaven. And it's very nice, of course. He looks around, he sees all the rivers and everything and so on and so forth, and all the trees and everything that is necessary. So he goes around and he looks at all these things. And he says, so this is nice, so now let me go and visit hell as well. So when he goes and visits hell, hell is amazing. He sees hell, and this is this amazing place which has everything that a person would ever want. So he says, well, heaven is nice, but hell seems to be much better. So I want to go to hell. So he goes to hell, and sometime later, Shaitan is called up by God to ask, what's happening, everything is okay. And he says, is Bill Gates okay? We've sent him there through his own choice. So Bill Gates comes on the phone and he complains to God. He says, you showed me heaven, and heaven was nice, and then you showed me hell, and hell was amazing, and I chose hell, and now here there's fire and scorpions and all the things that we expect from hell. So he says, why did you deceive me in the beginning? Why did you show me this amazing place as hell? So God says to him, that was the screensaver. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So in any case, this is what Iblis does. He puts this screensaver of beauty in front of the sins, and then we go onto the path of sins, and by the time we engross into that act of disobedience, it's the point of no return. So we're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this dress of taqwa, to make us the zinat of taqwa, and protect us from these evil things and this dazzling that shaitan puts in our way. And then Imam al-Islam is saying, now look, in this dua, in this journey of akhlaq, you have to think about your future. We spoke about priorities, but now he says you have to think about your future as well. You have to think about the moment of your life. You've already prayed in the beginning of the dua for a long life, and you've prayed for a long life in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he's emphasizing this here. So he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammadin waj'al awsa'a rizqaka ala idha kabirat. He says, oh Allah, I'm praying to you after praising Muhammad and his holy progeny, that I want you to increase my rizq. For what reason? I want you to make my rizq more. For the reasoning of what? Ala idha kabirat. When I become old, I have some wealth left behind. When I'm unable to then work anymore, Imam al-Islam is telling us, this is the important thing. When you're young, you have to think about your retirement fund. So he's saying, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He increases your rizq now, so that you have enough to save up for when you retire. وَأَقْوَى قُوَّتِكَ فِي إِذَا نَصِبَتْ. And increase my strength, so that once I become old, I can still keep up that ibadah and that service to you. وَلَا تَبْتِلْنِي بِالْكَسْلِ عَنْ عِبَادَتِكَ. And this one is very important, because all of us, and I don't use you as an example, I use me. You come home from a long day, and if you haven't prayed, as soon as you come home and you sit down in front of the TV, you think, oh no, I haven't prayed, and now I don't feel like getting up. So he says here, the Imam is saying, now pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La tabtilni bil kasli an ibadatik. Oh Allah, don't make me lazy when it comes to your ibadat and your worship. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this laziness is being affected you. You are being affected by it, by shaitan. Iblis wants you to put you into such a position that when you come home, you become so lazy that you sit down, and then you don't feel like getting up. So he says, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, this is part of the akhlaq. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save you from that laziness that you will affect it. وَلَا أَعْمَانْ سَبِيلِكَ. And don't make me blind from your path, from your way. That my journey is on your pathway, on your sabil, and that momentarily Iblis comes in my way and he wants to distract me off your path and take me somewhere else. So no, oh Allah, make sure that I stay on this path. And then he says, now pray for those other people. Again, he's reminding us, now you keep on praying to change that hate into love, to change that division into unity. Now what is he saying? He's saying, وَلَا بِالتَّعَرُّضِ لِلْخِلَافِ مُحَبَّةً. Well, those people who've gone against me, those people who are against me, put love in their hearts, so that they stop being against one another. We love each other on the basis of our beliefs and our iman. And وَلَا مُجَامَعَةِ مَنْ تَفَرَّقَ عَنْكَ. And where there's divisions, bring us closer together and make us united. And then he says, now you have to pray, you have to keep on praying against shaitan. Because shaitan has made a promise. And it's not an ordinary promise. when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes him from the mercy after his refusal to do sajda to Adam, Shaitan makes a promise, and he makes a promise after swearing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَبِعِزَّتِكَ لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I swear by your honor that I will misguide all of the children of Adam. I will take out the revenge of Adam against all the children of Adam. I swear by your honor. This is why the real threat is not from the people who don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan is the biggest believer in God. Not only does he believe, he believes in his honor, and he's swearing by his honor. And he's saying, I swear by your honor that I will misguide all of them until you have given me ila waqt al-ma'loom, until you've given me until that known time that you've given me permission to go out. So that means that if he is there and he's misguiding people, and he's already sworn by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's going to misguide people, that there has to be, is the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, means that there has to be somebody to guide as well. If shaitan has got their permission until waqt al-ma'loom, then at least until waqt al-ma'loom there has to be somebody to guide people and bring them towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And this, one of the proofs, the greatest proofs of the existence of the Imam Salamullah alayhi in our time, is that if shaitan is alive and all Muslims believe that he's alive, then that means that the Imam of your time is also there, and he's there guiding people, just as, even though we don't see shaitan, but we firmly believe that he misguides us. Even if we can't see the Imam, he's there certainly in every time is guiding us in whatever we do. And of course, this is the necessity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's justice. Any case, so the Imam says, now pray, Allahumma aj'al ma yulqi ash-shaytanu fi ru'ya min at-tamanni wat-tadhanni wal-hasadi dhikran li'azamatik. Oh Allah, shaitan wants to put false hopes and doubts and envy into my heart. And what he wants to do by this, if he puts this tamanni and tadhanni and hasad in my heart, I will forget your honor and your greatness, your adama. So protect me from these things so that I remain focused on your greatness, and that I keep on realizing that the real hope is with you. وَالتَّفَكُّرِ فِي قُدْرَتِكَ وَالتَّدَبُّرِ عَلَىٰ عَدُوِّكَ. And that he wants to remove this belief that you're the powerful one. He wants me to believe that he is powerful. Even though as soon as the people believe in him, the Quran tells us that as soon as people start believing in him, he says to them, believe in me. As soon as someone believes in him, he says to you, you have nothing to do with me. Now you're on your own. Now you're on your own. He leaves you. So when he's like this to people who obey him, what won't he be like to those who are trying to fight him off? Of course, this is going to be even more resistant. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is opening these doors of mercy for me, even though I keep on disobeying him. I keep on disobeying him, he still gives me these opportunities. After every moment, he keeps giving me these opportunities of forgiveness. And this is what the Imam says in this next part of the dua. He says, Allahumma ila maghfiratika wafadu ila afwika qasduk. That my purpose in this asking these prayers is your forgiveness, and to seek your forgiveness and your pardon from all these things that I've done wrong. Why? وَلَيْسَ إِنْدِي مَا يُوجِبُ لِي مَغْفِرَتَكَ. There's nobody, as far as I'm concerned, who can forgive these sins of mine. As far as I know, there's nobody else who has the capability to forgive my sins except for you. And so this protection from shaitan is very important, because no matter how much of a believer, how great of a believer I am, no matter how much Iman I think that I have within myself, no matter how good of a practicing person I am, Shaitan is always there. When he doesn't leave the people who are ma'soom and they are protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he keeps coming to the prophets, he keeps coming to the Aimma alayhi salam, then there's no hope. So I have to keep on praying, oh Allah, I have the Iman, I know what I need to believe, I have the righteous deeds, I know what to do. But there is this big test of yours, that you've allowed Iblis to have authority over people. You've allowed him to misguide people. And therefore, I'm praying to you to protect me from his evil and his deception and his false host, because he will lead me onto the path and then he will abandon me. And then when he abandons me, I'll neither be of shaitan nor will I be of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm left in no place at all. I'm abandoned by both of you because I obeyed shaitan, so I already abandoned God. Then he will abandon me as well. So I'm left with no hope whatsoever. So continually I have to keep on praying for this. Then he says, now remember that Islam and religion is not all about being boring and serious and just doing praying and fasting and hajj and all of these things. No, there's other things within the religion as well, and the Imam is reminding us of this. This is very important. He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali wa matta'ani bil iqtisad. He's saying, oh, after praising Muhammad and his holy progeny, oh Allah, give me pleasures, but bil iqtisad, that which is appropriate and enough. So, religion of Islam is not the religion like other religions. I don't mention any particular religion, but there's some other religions out there who think that having pleasure or having a good time is something wrong or contrary to the faith. No. Religion of Islam does not say this. Religion of Islam says, no, there has to be pleasure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you with desires, and some of those desires are pleasurable to you. Eating good food is pleasurable. Having relationship with other people within the halal bounds are pleasurable, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do so, to acquire those pleasures and benefit from them within the reams and the bounds that He has set out, within the lines that He set out. Eat everything, kulu washrabu, but make sure it's halal. Make sure you don't eat something that's haram. Have relationships, but make sure that those relationships are within the bounds of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal for you. Do not go into the reams of haram. Have pleasure. Don't deny the pleasure, because those people who deny the pleasure, then they are denying those natural things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And if they had no value and no purpose and they had no need, and there was a bad thing in pleasure, then Allah would never have created us with these things. He's created us with these things to show that there is a need for you to have pleasure. But it has to be within the appropriate means. For that, in this regard, I'm reminded of a story. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'm reminded of a story between Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam and Salman. That they were sitting together and they were eating dates, and Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salatu salam would eat the dates and he would place the seed of the date in front of Salman. So in front of Salman there was a big pile, and in front of Amirul Mu'minin there was nothing. So Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam says, Salman, you ate a lot of dates. So Salman says, Ya Ali, what about the person who ate the dates with the seeds? What about the one who ate the dates with the seeds? Then he says, Ya Ali, you shouldn't joke with me. So Amir al-Mu'minin says, why? He says, because I'm much older than you. You should respect me. You should respect me because I'm much older than you. It's mentioned in some riwayat that when Salman came to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he was over 200 years old. But in any case, even if he was not that old, he was certainly older than Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam. So Imam Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam says to him, Salman, are you really old? Now, with all due respect to the elders, if you say to someone who's older than you, you're really old, they don't like it. So when Amirul Mu'mineen says to Salman, are you really old? Salman says, what do you mean? So Amirul Mu'mineen says, let me remind you of a story. Salman says to Amirul Mu'mineen says to Salman, let me remind you of a story. He says, there was a time when you were with your parents, and your mother used to sell bouquets of flowers. You put the flowers together, all of them together, and she used to sell them. So she had sent you into the jungle to pick out the flowers and bring them back. And that time, one time you went out to pick the flowers, and out of nowhere a lion came. And the lion was about to attack you, and you were certain you were going to die. At that moment, there was a young man who appeared, and he fought off the lion, and he protected you. Now Salman is thinking to himself that this story, nobody knows about this story. Either I know this story, or my mother knows the story. Nobody else knows this story. I've never shared it with anybody. Nobody else was there. So Amirul Mu'mineen says that then when you saw that this young man saved your life because you were convinced you were going to die, then what did you do? So Salman says, I had picked out the flowers, and that is all I had. So I presented those flowers to the young man. So Amir al-Mu'min puts his hand inside his robe, and he takes out the flowers. He says, were these the flowers? He says, were these the flowers? Salman says, yes, these are the ones. He goes, who do you think it was who helped you on that day? The reason for sharing this story, of course, is to mention the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but also to show that there's a place for humor in Islam. Amir al-Mu'mineen shared a joke with Salman, who was older than him, to show that there's a place for humor in Islam, there's a place for halal pleasure in Islam. It's not all about being serious and crying. No, there's place for humor. It has to be done appropriately, it has to be... Unfortunately, the problem nowadays, especially in this part of the world, is that all the humor that we have is all too haram, unfortunately. The language that's used or other things that go on within those in the name of humor are all things which are unfortunately haram. But if humor is done appropriately, then this is a halal pleasure that Islam encourages us to appreciate. So Imam is saying that pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives you these pleasures, but He gives it to you appropriately. There should not be an excess within seeking these pleasures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. وَجَعَلْنِي مِنْ أَهْلِ السَّدَادِ وَمِنْ أَدِلَّةِ الرَّشَادِ. And O Allah, make me amongst those who understand, who have a reality of your understanding, who are people of Rashad. وَمِنْ صَالِحِ الْعِبَادِ. And make me amongst your righteous servants. وَارْزُقْنِي فَوْزَ الْمَعَادِ. And give me that real success on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment, if I'm successful, then that would be the real success that I have. Any success that I have in my life would be limited. But the success that I'd get on the day of judgment is the real and true success that I need. And then he says, now pray, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alihi wa tuwajjini bil kifaya wa summini husn al wilaya wa habli sidq al hidayah wa la taftini bis sa'a. Now he says, pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you sufficiency. He makes you sufficient in your life. Whatever He gives, He makes a person sufficient. Because, of course, when it comes to two things, Amirul Mu'mineen salam, in very famous narration says, when it comes to two things, he says, when it comes to two kinds of people, there are people who are never satisfied. That person who seeks wealth, no matter how much wealth they get, they're never satisfied. They always want more. And the other person is the one who seeks knowledge. The one who seeks knowledge is never satisfied, because as Socrates famously says, that the only thing that I know is that I don't know anything. The moment a person goes on this journey of seeking knowledge, they realize that the more that they learn, they realize how much I don't know. And so a person who's seeking wealth is never satisfied. A person who's seeking knowledge is not satisfied. And Imam al-Salam mentions these two examples to show that one of them is the way to destruction and one of them is the way to najat, towards success. If you seek wealth and you're never satisfied, then you'll be destructed, because the moment you seek wealth, or the moment you will go towards seeking wealth, you would destruct yourself. A very well-known story that there was a sprinter who, in the time of some king in the past, the king said to him, if you sprint for the distance that you will sprint, I will give you the land from my kingdom. So he started sprinting. He sprinted for so long, he ran for so long, because he wanted more and more of the land. Eventually he became exhausted and he died. And received that 6x4 that all of us are going to get. So even though he tried to run further to get more land, eventually he only got that which all of us, 6x4, of the grave, that we're all going to eventually get. So a person who goes for the dunya, that person, and a person who goes for knowledge is also the same. There are countless stories of ulama who went far and wide, long distances, in the holy city of Najaf. Until the 1950s, there was no electricity. There was no electricity. Electricity had come to Iraq, but there was no electricity in Najaf. In the middle of the 1950s, during the time of Ayatollah Sayyid Muhsin al-Hakim rahmatullah alayh, electricity came to Najaf. Somebody came to tell him, said, Sayyidina, electricity has come to Najaf. Congratulations. He said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He said to him, we're giving you good news. Telling you electricity has come to Najaf. Why are you saying Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un? He says, before only those who were truly committed used to come. Now there's electricity, everybody will come. Now there's electricity, everybody will come because they think it's easy. No, in terms of this journey of seeking knowledge, also a difficult journey. And that, many ahadith about this is obviously not, it's not our point of discussion, but in terms of akhlaq, and what is related to our discussion, in terms of akhlaq, in terms of good character, there cannot be any akhlaq if a person doesn't have the right knowledge about the deen. And that's the important thing to keep on reminding oneself. That remember, in the same way as a person takes care of where they're getting their food from, I always make sure that I'm getting my ingredients which are naturally sourced. I'm making sure that the food that's going inside me is not processed, doesn't have preservatives. I have to make sure that this spiritual nourishment that I'm also getting, I'm getting it from the right place. I'm getting it from the right sources. I'm getting it from the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu salam, and I keep on having to make sure that it's coming from the right places. And that to keep on praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that make sure that this spiritual nourishment that I get is also coming from the right places. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Then the Imam says, now he's coming towards the end of the prayer. He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala wa kaffini ma'unatal iktisab. Again, he keeps on reminding us that remember that this seeking of wealth, it's not a bad thing. You know, maybe in some cultures they might tell you, if you seek wealth or you become wealthy, this is a bad thing. No, religion of Islam says no. Seek wealth. Go out. Seek wealth for your families. Make sure you live in a comfortable house. Make sure you have things which are comfortable for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made this haram. But make sure about two things. Make sure, one, that it's coming, the source that you're earning is halal. Make sure that that source is not haram. Why? One very quick point about this. Why is it so important that the source is halal? Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura delivers his second sermon. While he's delivering the second sermon, he says to the people, the forces of Yazid, you're listening to me but you don't understand me, because your stomachs are full of haram. You're listening to me, you hear what I'm saying, but you don't understand what I'm saying and what I'm telling you, because your stomachs are full of haram. So, the source of where it's coming from is very important. The second thing that's equally as important is to make sure that I am spending within my means and I am helping other people. The essence of akhlaq is to make sure that I'm helping other people as well, that my wealth is helping other people as well. That I'm making sure that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with wealth, that I'm helping those people who are less fortunate than me. Imam Amirul Mu'minin says in a famous narration that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you the agent of all of that wealth which He's given you more than you need. That which you need is your rizq. The rest of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you His agent. And He's testing you to see whether you'll spend the rest of it on yourself as well, or you'll help other people. He has given you this rizq, He's made you the wasila of that wealth reaching other people. I've given you this much, and this much will be enough for you to survive. Now what are you going to do with the rest of it? Are you going to make your lifestyle from a moderate lifestyle into a lavish lifestyle? Are you going to increase the standard of your living? Or are you going to increase your giving and help other people who are less fortunate than you? Then finally, as we come right to the end of the dua, Imam alayhi salam says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alih warzuqni sihhatan fil ibadah. And this is important. This person can go on, sit on the musalla, pray, spend all their days in fasting, go for Hajj every year, do all the acts of ibadah. But if they're not correct, it's all a waste of time. So you saying, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make sure I'm doing all these ibadah and make sure I'm doing them correctly as well. Sometimes people say, oh, why do you go into these rulings and tell us, the water has to reach everywhere and the wudu and the prayer, this has to, all the places of prostration have to be correct and you have to all be touching the ground and you have to do sajda on this. Why do you go into so much details? If you're doing something, make sure you're doing it properly. And otherwise, acceptance is not there. The acceptance is dependent upon me making sure that I'm doing something correctly. Now, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. If I try to do something correctly and I fell short in that expectation, He will accept. But if I didn't even make the effort to find out what's correct, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be forgiving. Therefore, He's saying, pray that make sure that your actions are correct. وَفَرَاغًا فِي زَهَادِ وَعِلْمًا فِي isti'mal. This is very important and we pray for it every single day in the dua after the Asr prayer as well. We say, Oh Allah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min nafsin la tashba, wa min qalbin la yakhsha, wa min ilmin la yanfa', wa min salatin la turfa. Oh Allah, save me, a'udhu bika. Save me from that knowledge, ilmin la yanfa', that knowledge which is not beneficial. Sometimes people go out seeking knowledge and they have no goal in life and they say, oh, we're going out seeking knowledge and we're going to get thawab. No, make sure that you pray and you seek that knowledge and then you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make sure you save me. Don't waste my time that I'm going out seeking knowledge about things which will not benefit me. Wa salatin la turfa, and that salah which will not even rise up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He's saying here that pray that knowledge that you get is beneficial. It's beneficial for the use in my life. Make sure that knowledge that I'm seeking is beneficial. وَوَرَاءً فِي إِجْمَالٍ, and give me that beautiful wara, that beautiful protection, that beautiful obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wara is the stage top of taqwa. And then right, we're coming towards the final sentences of the prayer, and the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam then says that, remember, the whole summary of this dua is in this last sentence. He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa alihi ka afdala ma sallayta ala ahadin min khalqika qablu wa anta musalli ala ahadin ba'du wa atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar. This is the summary of the whole dua in the last sentence. He says, now say, praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise Muhammad and his family better than you praised all the people that came before and after him. And give us the best of this dunya, the best of this life, and the best in the hereafter. And save us from the fire of hell. Just a couple of moments about this ayah. This is ayah number 201 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And then, inshallah, we'll go towards Masai. We'll mention Imam Sajjad alayhi salam as his shahada tonight. And then we'll conclude. This dua, usually, as we're growing up in the madrasa, we taught this dua to recite in the qunut. And up to now we recite dua in the qunut, and it's a summary of what our life should be like. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana. Oh Allah, give me the best in this life. Wa fil akhirati hasana. He's saying, remember, Islam is a religion of balance. Islam is not a religion that, I just want the good in the akhirah, whatever happens in the dunya, it doesn't matter. No. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want the best in this dunya. And I want the best in the akhirah. You know, in English we say you can't have the best of both worlds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying you can. Pray to me. Ask me for it. Do dua that you want the best of both worlds. You want the best in this life and you want the best in the akhirah. And it is possible because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling me pray for it. وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Then why did Allah say وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ? And save me from the fire of hell. He says, when you're giving me the best in this life and the best in the hereafter, there's a possibility that because I have the best in this life, I might go towards your disobedience as well. Because I think I have the best. I've got everything good. So I think let's go towards Allah's disobedience. Or I have in the past gone towards your disobedience because I'm weak. Shaitan tempts me and I go towards your disobedience. Or my nafs tempts me. My own soul, my own self betrays me. It goes against me and it says, commit this act. It will. Don't worry about the consequences. So I go towards it. And that makes me entitled to your punishment. So, oh Allah, I'm praying to you, give me the best in this life and the best in the hereafter. And save me, even though I was deserving of your punishment. But don't treat me with your justice, treat me with your mercy. Because you are deserving of that. In every dua, we recite, we say that, oh Allah, treat me in the way that you deserve, and not the way that I deserve. It is fitting for you to treat me in a kind manner. It's fitting for you to show mercy upon me. I was not deserving of it. I'm not deserving of it. But it's fitting for you. You are ahl to treat me with mercy, to treat me with forgiveness, to forgive me, because you are the most merciful of those who show mercy. You are the most forgiving of those who forgive. So treat me in this way that you see best, and it is fitting for you to treat me. And this is how Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam used to treat people. Not only does he teach us this dua, not only does he talk the talk, but he walks the walk as well. No, he teaches us this dua of Makarim al-Akhlaq, tells us recite this dua, and in this dua, as you saw, it's not just a dua, it's not just a prayer, it's a way, a manual of how to live your life. He's saying this is the way to live your life, and this is how I lived my life. It's mentioned that Imam Sajjad alayhi salam used to buy 1,000 slaves from the marketplace every single day. After he came back from Karbala to Medina, he used to buy 1,000 slaves every day. And he would then free them. Occasionally it's mentioned that he would wait for the day of Eid. And he would keep a register in which he would list all the mistakes and all the errors that the slaves would do in their duties. And then when the day of Eid would come, he would read them out, and then he would say to them, you are all free to go. Now go and pray for Ali ibn al-Hussein. Go and pray for Ali. You made these mistakes, but I'm setting you free. And just go and pray for Ali ibn al-Hussein. Mentioned this story is mentioned for our 4th Imam, 7th Imam, also other Imams. Very well known. That one of the servants was bringing some food which was very hot, and it dropped on the Imam. As soon as it dropped on the Imam, the maid servant said, وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ Ayah of Holy Quran from Surah Al Imran. وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ Those who control their anger. Imam alayhi salam says, I've controlled my anger. Then she says, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ And those who forgive the people. The Imam says, I've forgiven you. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ Imam says, I've set you free. This person committed an act against the Imam, even though it was by mistake. Instead of punishing when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ He says, go. I've set you free. And this ayah is very interesting. وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ Those who control their anger. وَعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ And those who forgive the people. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ Allah is saying, remember that controlling your anger and forgiving the people is expected from you. If you want to become the beloved of God, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ You have to do something extra. You have to make sure you do a favor, ihsan on the people. That is the stage. That's doing ihsan on people. That doing a favor, doing good to people, even after they've done what they've done, is the greatest stage. And that's the stage of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, of what they did. After the event of Karbala, Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam should have gone out and killed everyone. You killed 17 members of my family all in one day? I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to reason with anyone. I'm coming out there and killing you. And it's not as if it's not as if Imam could not do this. Final point, and then we'll mention the Masai. Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam has 5 people with him when he's in Medina, when he gets this announcement, this message from Yazid. He has 5 people with him. If there's one thing you take from today, make sure it's this. Imam Hussein alayhi salam has 5 people with him in Medina when he receives the message, the question of allegiance for Yazid. If he brings these 5 people to Karbala, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 100,000, as many people there are, these 5 people are sufficient to finish them off. Who are these 5 people? Number 1, Muhammad al-Hanafiya, his younger brother. Number 2, Abdullah ibn Ja'far, who's his cousin and his brother-in-law. He's the husband of Sayyidah Zainab salamullah. Number 3, Muslim ibn Aqil. Number 4, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And number 5, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, he has these 5 people. If he brings them to Karbala, they're sufficient to finish off everybody. Imam says, what did I do? Look at my policy. What did I do? I left Muhammad al-Hanafiya in Medina. I've left Abdullah ibn Ja'far in Mecca. I've sent Muslim ibn Aqil to Kufa. I've taken the izn of jihad away from Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam is sick. If I wanted to fight, I wouldn't have done this. If the purpose was battle, if the purpose was killing people, if the purpose was a military victory over Yazid, all of these 5 people would not have been separated from me. I've separated them to show that my purpose is something else. I've separated them to show you that my purpose in this battle is something else. What's the purpose? This is the purpose. After the men are killed, the day of Ashura has passed. Now the purpose begins of the battle of Karbala. The purpose of the Battle of Karbala. They come into Kufa. In Kufa, as I've been mentioning the last couple of days, everybody knows Ahlul Bayt. Imam Amirul Mu'mineen salam used to rule in Kufa. They know. So Imam Sajjad speaks to the people of Kufa. He says, "O people of Kufa, you invited my father, then you abandoned him. You betrayed him. May your tears never stop, because you abandoned and you betrayed my father. But when he comes to Sham, when he comes to Damascus, his attitude, his tone has totally changed." Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam says, when he was asked after returning back to Medina, "Ya ibn Rasulullah, what was the moment where you felt the most pain? What was the moment where you felt the most pain?" And we all know the answer to this. But if we didn't know the answer, we would never been able to guess the answer. Because why? We would have said, surely the pain of seeing your cousin being trampled by the hooves of the horses while he's still alive is a severe pain. Surely we would have said, when Qasim ibn Hassan was trampled by the hooves of the horses, that would have been painful for Imam Sajjad. Said, if that wasn't painful, then to see your brother with a broken spear in his chest and die. When Ali al-Akbar had the broken spear in his chest, that must have been painful for Imam Sajjad. No, when Imam Hussain alayhi salam goes with the 6-month-old baby to ask for water and they receive a 3-pronged arrow, that must have been painful for Imam Sajjad. He says, when Hussain alayhi salatu salam was all alone and it was the blunt dagger on his neck, that must have been painful. How painful is it to see your father in that kind of calamity? But Imam alayhi salam says, Asham, Asham, Asham. Sham was the most difficult place for me. It was the place where I felt the most pain, the most affliction, the most agony. They asked him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, why? He said, because my women folk were brought into the marketplace. Those women folk for whom the ayah of Tathir was revealed. Those women folk for whom Imam Hussain alayhi salatu salam used to stand up from his place. Those women folk who had so much respect in the house of the Prophet, those women folk were brought into the marketplace. He says it was a calamity for me because the heads of the shuhada were placed on lances and they were being paraded around. He says it was a calamity for me because the people of Sham used to come and they used to throw boiling water and burning firewood onto us. They used to throw boiling water and burning firewood onto us. My turban became burnt because of the firewood that they would throw on us, which was alight. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam says, they tied us all with a single rope. They tied us all with a single rope. And that when the one who was taller would try to raise their neck, everybody else would be stretched by the material of the rope. And then we were thrown into a prison which had no roof. We were thrown into a prison which had no roof, and the sun would beat down onto us. This is why Sham was so painful for me. Why else was Sham so painful? That Yazid had a person on the minbar and he was cursing the family of Amirul Mu'mineen. Yazid had a person on the minbar who was cursing the family of Amirul Mu'mineen. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam said, how painful was that for me to listen to my grandfather being cursed in the public. Then Imam alayhi salatu wasalam came back to Medina. When he came back to Medina, he would continually remember. He would pass by the butchers and he would say, it's mentioned one time he was passing by a butcher who was about to slaughter an animal. He said, stop. He said, do you know the rules of slaughter? He says, yes, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I heard that your grandfather said. Your grandfather said, feed the animal with water for 3 days. Feed the animal with water for 3 days, then slaughter the animal. He says, yes, for the animals, they're fed water for 3 days. And my father was kept thirsty for 3 days before he was killed. We use a sharp knife to kill the animal so he doesn't feel pain. Imam says, yes, my father was killed with a blunt dagger so that he would feel more pain. Allahu Akbar. My father was killed with a blunt dagger so that he would feel more pain. Allahu Akbar. It's mentioned in the 95th year after Hijrah, on the night of the 25th of Moharram, Imam alayhi salam was administered the poison, and the poison affected his body. He passed away. Imam al-Baqir narrates that when I went to give the ghusl to my father, there were marks on his back and his shoulder. When the people asked me, what are these marks on his back and his shoulder? I told them that my father used to go out and feed the people in Medina without ever letting them know who was feeding them. Ajrakum Allah. May Allah give you no grief other than the grief of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When the ghusl was complete, Imam was placed in the coffin. It's mentioned that it was the grandest funeral in Medina. We should rather say it was the first funeral of Ahlul Bayt. Rasulullah was buried, only a handful of people came to the funeral. Amirul Mu'mineen, Hassan and Hussein held it from the back, Jibraeel and Mikael from the front. Zahra was buried in the middle of the night. Hassan alayhi salam had arrows fired on his funeral. Hussein was left on the burning sands for 3 days. Sajjad is the first person from Ahlul Bayt to have a funeral. Imam al-Sajjad is the first member of Ahlul Bayt to actually have a funeral. It's mentioned thousands of people in Medina had gathered in the funeral of Imam al-Sajjad. The heart goes out and thinks, Imam in that coffin must have been thinking, here is my funeral, and such a grand funeral it is. But what about my father? Where for 3 days his body lay on the burning sands after being trampled by the hooves of the horses. And then when I returned after 3 days, there were a few people from Bani Asad who came and helped me to bury my father. Allah wa la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات حسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. For those for Matam, please come forward. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. في الطفوف تزبى زينب للعين وتنادي أين أنت يا معيني وحسينا 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 وحسينا. When in Karbala the soldiers of Yazid shackled Zainab. When in Karbala the soldiers of Yazid shackled Zainab. Choking back her tears, she cried out in pain, "Oh, where are you, Hussein? Oh, where are you, Hussein? Wa Habiba, Wa Habiba, Wa Habiba, Wa Husseina, Wa Husseina, Wa Husseina, fit nafufi, tuzba Zainab lil aini. وتنادي أين أنت يا معيني وحسينا 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 Husseina, but your body lay trampled and slain, lifeless on the sand. But your body lay trampled and slain, lifeless on the sand. And your holy head thrust atop a spear, severed by Shimmer's hand, severed by Shimmer's hand. Wakatila, 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 Wa Husseina, Wa Husseina, Wa Husseina, fit tafufi, tuzba Zainab lil aini. وتنادي أين أنت يا معيني وحسينا وحسينا وحسينا. You gave everything in a strange land to bring back true Islam. Your Quran in red, we who heed your call will never be misled, will never be misled. Wa ghariba, wa ghariba, wa ghariba, wa Husseina, wa Husseina, wa Husseina, fit tafufi, tuzba Zainab lil aini. وتنادي أين أنت يا معيني وحسينا 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 وحسينا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد رسول الله. السلام عليك أمير المؤمنين وإمام المؤمنين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.